My name is James Wilson, and at 24, I've built a life most people my age only dream about. Senior software engineer, waterfront apartment, financial freedom. But 6 years ago, I stood in my childhood bedroom with a backpack and shattered dreams, reading my father's words on a check he'd just torn in half. Your sister's education has to come first. The text from my mom just now, after 6 years of silence, brought it all flooding back. Before I share how betrayal shaped my journey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if family drama stories resonate with you. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Detroit, Michigan, in what I always thought was a loving middle-class family. Our house wasn't fancy. A modest 3-bedroom, with faded blue siding that my dad, Harold Wilson, was always promising to replace next summer. Mom Margaret worked part-time at the local library, while Dad ran his moderately successful construction business. My sister Natalie was 2 years younger than me. We shared the same dark hair and hazel eyes, but that's where our similarities ended. From elementary school onward, academics came naturally to me. I'd bring home straight A's without much effort, while Natalie struggled to maintain C's despite hours of tutoring. I discovered programming when I was 12 after my uncle gave me his old laptop. Within months, I was coding simple games and fixing neighbors' computer problems for pocket money. By high school, I was taking every advanced placement computer science and mathematics course available, even doing online college modules on the side. That boy's going places teachers would tell my parents at conferences. Dad would nod stiffly, offering a brief. He gets it from his mother's side. He was old-fashioned that way, viewing education as necessary but believing too much emphasis on academic achievement made boys soft. He'd rather have seen me working construction with him during summers than playing with computers. Still, even Dad couldn't argue with the results when MIT accepted me with a partial scholarship during my senior year. It wasn't a full ride. I'd still need about $30,000 per year, but my parents had always talked about the college fund they'd been building for both Natalie and me. The night I got my acceptance letter, we actually celebrated as a family. Mom made my favorite lasagna, Dad brought home a bottle of champagne, and let me have a glass saying, "This calls for an exception." Even Natalie seemed genuinely happy for me, giving me a rare hug. "I always knew you'd get in," Mom said, tears in her eyes. "We're so proud of you." Dad raised his glass. To James. The first Wilson to go to an Ivy League. MIT is technically not Ivy League, Dad, I corrected gently. It's... Don't ruin the moment with details. He laughed and I let it go. It was one of the few times I remember feeling truly valued by him. That spring and summer, I worked 60-hour weeks at both the local electronics store and waiting tables at night. Every dollar went into my MIT fund jar. My girlfriend Alicia, who was headed to Michigan State in the fall, would sometimes bring me coffee during my late shifts. "You're working too hard," she'd say, concerned. "Your parents are helping with tuition, right?" "Yeah, but I want to contribute," I'd answer. "Plus I'll need money for books and living expenses." The truth was, I wanted to show my parents I wasn't taking their support for granted. I managed to save nearly $8,000 by August. Meanwhile, Natalie had graduated high school with barely a B- average. She had no clear direction, having changed her mind about potential careers every few months. One week she wanted to be a photographer, the next, a marine biologist, then an interior designer. By summer, she'd settled on art history, applying late to several private universities, known more for their beautiful campuses than academic rigor. I noticed my parents having hushed conversations that would stop when I entered the room. Dad was spending more time at the office, claiming business was complicated right now. Mom seemed anxious, checking the mail before anyone else could. Looking back, the signs were there, but I was too caught up in my MIT preparations to see the storm brewing. Alicia and I were already discussing how we'd manage our relationship long distance. We'd been together since junior year, and while we were both nervous about the separation, we believed we could make it work. 4 years will fly by, she assured me. We'll have holidays, summers, and video calls. I believed her. I believed in us. I believed in the future that seemed so clearly mapped out before me. I had no idea how completely that map would be shredded in a single evening. 2 weeks before I was scheduled to leave for MIT, Dad called a family meeting. These were rare in our household, and usually meant something serious. The last one had been when Grandpa died. I sat at our kitchen table watching Mom fidget with her napkin. Natalie slouched in her chair, texting under the table. Dad cleared his throat, shuffling some papers in front of him. "We need to discuss finances," he began, not making eye contact with me. "Specifically, college expenses." My stomach tightened. Something in his tone made me instantly uneasy. "Is everything okay? Is the business?" "The business is fine," he cut me off. "But we've had to make some difficult decisions about our family priorities." Mom stared fixedly at the table. Natalie suddenly put her phone down, giving Dad her full attention. Another bad sign. James' dad continued, his voice formal, as if reading from a script. "We've always supported your academic goals, but circumstances have changed. We've reassessed our financial situation, and we can no longer contribute to your MIT education." The words hung in the air. I waited for more explanation but that would make this make sense. It didn't come. "What do you mean?" I finally asked. "The college fund. We need to allocate our resources where they'll do the most good." Dad interrupted. "Your sister's education has to come first." I looked at Natalie, who had the decency to blush slightly, but didn't speak up. "I don't understand," I said, my voice rising. "I got a scholarship. I've been saving all summer. I only need partial tuition assistance." Dad slid a brochure across the table. "For Westfield Academy, a private university known primarily for its beautiful campus and country club atmosphere, not its academics, Natalie's top choice. Natalie has been accepted to Westfield. It's $45,000 a year, and she doesn't qualify for any academic scholarships. She needs our full support." "But she barely passed high school," I said, immediately regretting the harshness of my words. "I mean, she hasn't even decided on a major for sure, and I've been working toward MIT for years." "That's exactly why she needs the support more than you do," Dad replied coolly. "You've always succeeded on your own. You'll find a way. Natalie needs this opportunity to find her path." I turned to Mom, whose eyes were now swimming with tears. "Did you know about this?" She nodded almost imperceptibly. "We discussed it. Your father feels—" "We decided," Dad corrected her. "As a family." "Without me," I pointed out. "You decided without me." "You're young and talented," Dad said. "You can go to state with Alicia, get the same degree for a quarter of the price, or take a year off work, save up. MIT will still be there." "You promised," I said, my voice cracking. "You've been talking about the college fund my whole life. I turned down other scholarships because you said you had it covered." Dad's expression hardened. "Life isn't fair, son. Sometimes plans change. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out." I turned to Natalie. "Did you know?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Dad and Mom just told me yesterday. I didn't ask them to do this, James." "But you're okay with it," I said. "Not a question." She shrugged. "It's not my decision. But Westfield is my dream school, and art history programs are really competitive." I laughed bitterly. "Art history? Last month it was graphic design. Before that, psychology." "That's exactly why she needs the right environment to explore her options," Dad said firmly. "Your path has always been clear. Hers isn't." I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "So I'm being punished for having direction, for working hard, for knowing what I want to do with my life." "Nobody's being punished," Dad said. "We're making the best decision for the whole family." "The whole family minus me," I shot back. I went to my room and called MIT's financial aid office, desperately explaining my situation. They were sympathetic but clear. Even with additional loans, I'd be short at least $15,000 for the first year alone. With my acceptance contingent on the ability to pay, I'd have to defer enrollment. That evening I overheard my parents arguing. "A rare occurrence." "He deserves the chance," Harold Mom was saying. "We promised him." "Natalie deserves a chance too," Dad responded. "James will be fine no matter what. He always lands on his feet. Natalie needs this boost. But all his hard work will continue to serve him well," Dad interrupted. "This decision is final, Margaret." Later that night, I confronted Natalie in the hallway outside her room. "Are you happy now?" She crossed her arms defensively. This isn't my fault, James. I didn't ask them to choose. But you're not refusing the money either, I pointed out. You could tell them this is wrong. Why should I give up my chance? She fired back, sudden anger in her voice. It's always been about you. James the genius. James the perfect son. For once I'm the priority. You could go to community college, first figure out what you actually want to do, I suggested. Not waste $45,000 a year on a whim. Not everyone has it all figured out at 18, she snapped. Some of us need time to explore. At someone else's expense, I said quietly. She glared at me. Just because you've had everything easy? Easy, I interrupted. I worked for this, Natalie. Every grade, every project, every late night studying. Nothing was handed to me. Except natural intelligence, she retorted. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Having teachers say, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" I deserve this chance, James. I'm sorry it came at your expense, but I'm not giving it up. I went back to my room and sat on my bed staring at the MIT acceptance letter I'd framed. All those years of hard work of dreaming, planning, sacrificing, erased in a single conversation. And not because of something outside our control like a financial emergency or health crisis, but because my parents had made a conscious choice to prioritize my sister's vague aspirations over my concrete achievements. That's when I made my decision. I packed a backpack with essential clothes, my laptop, and the $8,000 I'd saved. I wrote a brief note. Since I'm not a priority in this family, I won't burden you any longer. Don't try to contact me. I waited until everyone was asleep, then slipped out into the warm August night, closing the door silently behind me. I didn't look back. That first night, I crashed on my friend Marcus's couch. His parents were away on vacation, so I had a few days to figure out my next steps. Marcus was heading to UCLA in a week, and offered to let me stay in his room until he left. Dude, that's messed up, he said, after I explained what happened. Your parents can't just pull the rug out from under you like that. But they had. And the reality of my situation was sinking in fast. I called MIT to officially defer my enrollment, hoping against hope that I could find a way to make it work for the following year. Then I called Alicia. Move in with me, she suggested immediately. My parents love you. You could transfer to state with me. It was tempting, but pride stopped me. I can't be a charity case, Alicia. I need to figure this out on my own. Within a week, I'd found a tiny apartment with 2 roommates. Dave, a community college student, and Eric, a bartender. The place was barely bigger than my bedroom at home, with peeling wallpaper and suspicious stains on the carpet, but the rent was cheap enough that I could afford it with my savings while looking for work. Mom called repeatedly those first few days. I ignored her calls, but finally texted, "I'm safe. Don't contact me again." Dad called once, leaving a voicemail about dramatic overreactions and time to grow up. I deleted it without finishing. Natalie sent a text saying she was sorry about how things turned out, but hoped we could still be family. I didn't respond. Finding work was harder than I expected. Without a college degree, my programming skills weren't enough to land a tech job. I took a position stocking shelves overnight at a grocery store and delivered pizzas during evenings. Between the 2 jobs, I was working 70 hours a week and barely making enough to cover rent, food, and basic necessities. Depression hit me hard that fall. While my former classmates were starting their freshman year of college, I was arranging canned goods at 3 in the morning, my hands raw from the cold and the repetitive motion. I'd check social media during breaks, seeing Natalie's posts from Westfield, smiling with new friends, decorating her dorm room that cost more per month than my entire apartment, complaining about boring classes that my parents were paying full price for her to attend. Alicia tried to be supportive, but the distance between our experiences grew. She was enjoying college life, making friends, attending football games, joining clubs. Our calls became less frequent, our conversations more strained. By Thanksgiving, we mutually agreed to break up. It's not that I don't care about you, she said, crying, but we're in such different places now. She was right. I wasn't the same ambitious, optimistic guy she'd fallen for in high school. I was exhausted, bitter, and barely treading water. The turning point came in December. I was at a small electronics repair shop, hoping to fix my failing laptop that I couldn't afford to replace. The owner, Thomas Chen, struck up a conversation while working on it. This is a simple fix, he said, opening the case. But I'm curious. These programming files are pretty advanced. You, a computer science student? Was going to be? I answered, then found myself telling him my story. Thomas listened thoughtfully. My shop does some IT support for local businesses. Could use someone with your skills even without the degree. Pays not great to start, but better than stocking shelves. That job changed everything. Though I started at just $15 an hour doing basic tech support, I finally had my foot in the door of the industry. Thomas became more than a boss. He was the mentor I needed. When business was slow, he'd challenge me with programming problems or teach me new skills. Education isn't just about degrees, he told me. It's about never stopping learning. I took his words to heart, using every spare moment to study. I built websites for small businesses on the side, learned new programming languages, and created a portfolio of projects. After 6 months, Thomas promoted me to junior technician with a raise. The company had a modest tuition assistance program for employees. It wasn't enough for MIT, but it could help me take night classes at the local community college. I enrolled in their computer science program, attending classes after working full days. Those first 2 years were brutal. I'd work from 8 to 5, attend classes until 9, then study until midnight, before starting again the next day. Weekends were for additional freelance work and more studying. I lost touch with most of my high school friends who couldn't relate to my grinding lifestyle. The hardest part was the loneliness. My roommates came and went. I barely got to know them beyond rent arrangements. Dating was out of the question. I simply didn't have the time or energy. Holidays were particularly difficult. I'd see families shopping together or celebrating, and the wound of my own family's betrayal would reopen. I declined invitations to spend Thanksgiving or Christmas with coworkers, preferring to work through the holidays for the extra pay. Occasionally, news about my family would reach me through mutual connections. Mom had started working full-time at the library. Dad's business was expanding. Natalie had changed her major twice already, from art history to communications, then to business marketing. Each update reinforced my determination to succeed without them. By the end of my second year of this new life, I had completed my associate's degree in computer science with a perfect 4.0 GPA. Thomas's company had grown, and I'd grown with it now, working as a full developer, implementing solutions for clients. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to thrive. As I entered my third year of independence, things began accelerating. Thomas's company landed several larger clients, and my role expanded from support to development. I was now earning a respectable $55,000 a year, not tech giant money, but enough to move into my own small apartment without roommates. The dingy studio apartment became my sanctuary and workshop. I set up a proper desk with dual monitors, invested in a comfortable chair, and created a space dedicated to continuing my education. My routine was relentless work during the day, online classes toward my bachelor's degree at night, and weekends spent on personal projects that would expand my portfolio. The turning point came when one of our clients, a local medical office, complained about their inefficient patient management system. After listening to their frustrations, I spent a weekend creating a prototype of a more streamlined solution. "This isn't part of our contract," Thomas warned when I showed him. "I know," I replied. "But if it works, think about how many other medical offices could use something similar." He gave me the green light to develop it further. 3 months later, our company launched MediTrack, a patient management system that was simpler and more affordable than the bloated enterprise solutions on the market. It quickly became our flagship product, with Thomas giving me a substantial bonus and promoting me to senior developer. "You've got a gift," he told me. "Not just for coding, but for seeing problems and creating solutions." With my improved financial situation, I accelerated my education, taking more classes each semester. I also began attending tech conferences and networking events, gradually building connections in the industry beyond our small company. At one such conference in Chicago, I presented our MediTrack system to an audience that included representatives from larger tech firms. After my presentation, a woman approached me. "That was impressive," she said, introducing herself as Rebecca Morgan, a project manager from Horizon Tech in Seattle. "Especially the user interface design. Most healthcare applications are nightmares to navigate." We exchanged contact information, and over the following months, we kept in touch professionally discussing industry trends and sharing ideas. When Horizon had an opening for a development team lead, Rebecca encouraged me to apply. But I haven't even finished my bachelor's degree, I objected during a video call. James, your portfolio speaks louder than any degree, she insisted, and Horizon values talent over credentials. Besides, you can complete your degree in Seattle. The interview process was rigorous. 5 rounds of technical assessments and meetings with various team members. When they offered me the position at nearly double my current salary plus relocation assistance, I was stunned. At 23, less than 5 years after being denied my college fund, I was being handed an opportunity that many MIT graduates would envy. Telling Thomas was difficult. He'd been more than a boss. He'd been the mentor and supporter I needed when my own family had failed me. I'd be a poor mentor if I tried to keep you from this opportunity, he said, genuinely happy for me. You've outgrown us, and that's exactly as it should be. Moving to Seattle marked the beginning of a new chapter. Horizon Tech was everything I'd dreamed of. Cutting-edge projects, brilliant colleagues, and a culture that valued innovation. I thrived in this environment, quickly earning respect for both my technical skills and leadership abilities. Within 18 months, I was promoted to senior team lead, managing a group of developers, some with advanced degrees from prestigious universities. I finally completed my bachelor's degree in computer science through online courses, graduating with highest honors. The day my diploma arrived in the mail, I felt a complex mix of emotions, pride in what I'd accomplished, but also a lingering sadness for the path not taken. This wasn't the MIT education I dreamed of, but I'd managed to build a successful career nonetheless. My personal life began to flourish as well. I made friends among my colleagues, joined a hiking group to explore the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and even started dating occasionally. Rebecca and I had developed a close friendship that gradually evolved into something more. She understood my drive and ambition, having fought her own battles to succeed in the male-dominated tech industry. You never talk about your family, she observed one evening as we shared dinner at my apartment, now a modern one-bedroom with a view of the Seattle skyline. Not much to say, I deflected. We're not in contact. She didn't push, but over time I shared bits and pieces of my story. Rebecca didn't offer platitudes or insist that family is always worth reconciling with. Instead, she listened and supported my boundaries. Family is who treats you like family, she said simply. Sometimes that's not who you're related to. Despite my professional success and personal growth, I still carried the weight of my family's betrayal. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Marshall, to work through the abandonment issues and trust problems that had developed. You've built an impressive life, Dr. Marshall noted during one session. But you're still defining yourself partly by this rejection. What would it mean to fully let go? I wasn't sure how to answer that. The anger had become a driving force, pushing me to succeed almost out of spite. Who would I be without it? Through mutual hometown connections, I occasionally heard updates about my family. Dad's construction business was doing well. Mom had been promoted to head librarian. And Natalie, the sister whose education had been prioritized over mine, had dropped out of Westfield after 2 years, having changed her major 3 times. She was now working at a marketing firm, a job she could have easily gotten with a degree from a state school at a quarter of the price. I wish I could say this news didn't affect me, but it did. There was a small petty part of me that felt vindicated, proof that my parents had backed the wrong horse. But mostly I felt sad for all of us. For the relationships destroyed, for the trust broken, for the family that could have been. By my 24th birthday, I had achieved more than I'd ever imagined possible in such a short time. I owned my apartment, had a 6-figure salary, led a respected team at a growing tech company, and had healthy relationships with friends and my girlfriend Rebecca. From the outside, my life looked perfect. But that's when my phone lit up with a text from a number I still knew by heart, despite not having contacted it in 6 years. James, it's Mom. Please call. It's important. I stared at my phone for a long time, the message from my mother glowing accusingly on the screen. 6 years of silence, and now, it's important. My thumb hovered over the delete button, muscle memory from the handful of previous attempts she'd made to contact me over the years. Rebecca found me like that, frozen in indecision when she came over for our dinner plans. Bad news, she asked, noting my expression. My mother, I said, showing her the phone. First contact in almost 2 years. The last attempt had been a Christmas card with a brief note saying they missed me. I'd thrown it away, unopened, but not before noticing the return address was still the same house I'd grown up in. Are you going to call? Rebecca asked, not pushing in either direction. I don't know. I set the phone down. Part of me wants to ignore it, but you're curious, she finished for me. I nodded, and worried if I'm honest. She wouldn't reach out unless something was wrong. After dinner with Rebecca's quiet support, I finally made the call. Mom answered on the first ring as if she'd been sitting with the phone in her hand. James. Her voice was older, shakier than I remembered. You called back. You said it was important, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. A pause. It's your father. He had a heart attack 3 days ago. It was serious, James. Despite everything, my stomach dropped. Is he? He's alive, she quickly assured me. But he needed bypass surgery. He's still in the hospital. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt I should offer sympathy, but another part, the wounded 18-year-old who still lived inside me, felt nothing. I'm sorry to hear that. I finally managed the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. There's more, Mom continued, her voice breaking slightly. The business has been struggling for the past year. Your father was working too hard trying to save it. Between the medical bills and the business debts. I closed my eyes. Of course. They needed money. How much do you need? I asked bluntly. What? No, James, that's not why I called. Mom protested, but her denial lacked conviction. We've missed you. This health scare has made us realize how precious family is. We want to make amends. After 6 years. Because Dad had a heart attack, and you're in financial trouble. It's not like that, she insisted. We've wanted to reach out for years, but you made it clear you didn't want contact. We respected your wishes. I almost laughed at that. Respected my wishes. Like you respected my wish to attend the college I'd worked toward my entire life. A long silence followed. We made mistakes, James. Terrible mistakes. I've regretted it every day since you left. But Dad hasn't, I guessed. Another pause. He's complicated. But nearly dying changes a person. He's been asking for you. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache forming. And Natalie Howe's her art history degree, working out. Mom's sigh carried years of weariness. She dropped out after sophomore year. She's working at a marketing firm in Grand Rapids now. So the $45,000 a year that could have sent me to MIT was wasted. I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. It wasn't just about the money, James' mom said quietly. There were other factors. But those are conversations to have in person, not over the phone. I looked at Rebecca, who was giving me space, but staying close enough to offer support if needed. Her presence gave me strength. I've built a life here, Mom. A good one, without any help from my family. I know, she said. We've followed your career a bit, through LinkedIn and mutual friends. We're very proud of you. The words stung more than I expected. You don't get to be proud of me. You didn't contribute to any of this. You're right, she acknowledged, surprising me. We failed you, but we're still your parents, and we still love you. All we're asking is a chance to see you, to try to explain. After that, if you want to walk away again, we'll understand. I shouldn't care. I should be completely indifferent to their situation. But despite everything, I found myself asking, how bad are the finances? Mom hesitated. We might lose the house. The medical bills. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs are substantial, and the business has debts that need to be paid. And you thought what? That your successful tech son would swoop in and save the day. No, she said firmly. I called because your father might not have much time left, and whatever happened between you, I thought you deserved to know. The money situation is our problem to solve. I was silent for a long moment, processing. Finally, I said, I'll think about it. That's all I can promise right now. That's more than we deserve, Mom replied. Thank you, James. After hanging up, I told Rebecca everything. The heart attack, the financial problems, The request for reconciliation? What are you thinking? She asked when I finished. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to book a flight right now. Another part says they made their choice years ago and I owe them nothing. She took my hand. Both parts are valid, James. What does your heart say? That I need closure, I realized. One way or another. I've been carrying this for 6 years, and maybe seeing them confronting the past directly is the only way to truly move beyond it. Then that's what you should do, she said simply. Not for them, but for you. Would you? I hesitated. Would you come with me? She squeezed my hand. If you want me there, wild horses couldn't keep me away. The next day, I requested time off from work. My first personal leave since joining the company. My team was supportive, especially after I briefly explained the situation. Family stuff is complicated, my colleague Michael said. Take whatever time you need. I booked flights for Rebecca and me to Detroit for the following week, giving myself time to prepare emotionally for what lay ahead. Dr. Marshall fit me in for an emergency session. This is a significant step, he observed. What are your expectations? I don't have any, I replied. That's the problem. Perhaps that's wise, he suggested. Go with an open mind but firm boundaries. Listen to what they have to say, but remember that you get to decide what role, if any, they play in your life going forward. The night before our flight, I couldn't sleep. Rebecca found me at 3 a.m, staring out the window at Seattle's glittering skyline. Second thoughts, she asked, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I'm trying to prepare for every possible scenario, I admitted. What if Dad's the same as always? What if they ask for money? What if seeing them reopens all the old wounds? Then we'll deal with it, she said calmly. Together. As our plane began its descent into Detroit Metropolitan Airport, I looked down at the familiar landscape of my childhood. I'd left as a broken, betrayed 18-year-old with nothing but a backpack and determination. I was returning as a successful adult, with a life I'd built entirely on my own terms. Whatever happened in the coming days, I realized couldn't take that away from me. The rental car felt uncomfortably small as we drove through my old neighborhood. 6 years had changed things less than I expected. The same coffee shop on the corner, the same faded billboard advertising, a local insurance agent, the same pothole at the intersection of Maple and Oak that the city never seemed to fix. It's smaller than I remembered, I told Rebecca, as we turned onto my parents' street. Hometowns usually are, she replied, squeezing my hand. The blue siding of my childhood home had finally been replaced, now a muted gray with white trim. The maple tree in the front yard had grown taller, its branches now reaching over the roof. Dad's truck was missing from the driveway, replaced by a modest sedan I didn't recognize. Mom must have been watching for us because the front door opened before I could even knock. The woman who stepped onto the porch was both familiar and a stranger. Her dark hair now streaked with gray new lines around her eyes, and mouth thinner than I remembered. James, she breathed, one hand covering her mouth. You're really here. I nodded stiffly, unsure if I should hug her, or shake her hand, or simply walk past. She made the decision for me, stepping forward and embracing me tightly. I stood rigid in her arms, not returning the hug but not pulling away either. And you must be Rebecca, Mom said after releasing me, wiping tears from her eyes. Thank you for coming with him. Rebecca shook her hand warmly. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Wilson. Margaret, please, Mom insisted. Come in, both of you. I've prepared the guest room. I stopped her. We're staying at a hotel downtown. I'd made that decision deliberately, needing the space and escape option. Disappointment flickered across her face, but she nodded. Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable. The house was both familiar and different inside. New furniture, fresh paint, but the same layout, the same family photos on the walls. Including, I noticed with a jolt, pictures of me, my high school graduation candid shots from childhood, even a recent professional headshot they must have found online. How's Dad? I asked, wanting to get to the point of this visit. He's home now, Mom explained, resting upstairs. The doctors say he's doing well, all things considered, but he needs to take it easy. And Natalie. She's coming for dinner tonight. She's been staying here helping out since your father's heart attack. I nodded, unsurprised. Of course Natalie would be the dutiful daughter in crisis. Would you like to see your father? Mom asked hesitantly. He's awake. He knows you're coming. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. That's why I'm here. Rebecca touched my arm. I can wait downstairs if you'd prefer to see him alone first. I appreciated the offer, but shook my head. I want you with me. Mom led us upstairs to the master bedroom. The door was partially open, and I could see Dad propped up against pillows, looking at something on a tablet. He looked older, grayer, and somehow smaller than the imposing figure of my memory. A hospital-style tray table held an assortment of medication bottles. Mom knocked gently. Harold James is here. He looked up, and for a moment something like fear flashed across his face before he composed himself. James, you came. I stepped into the room, Rebecca beside me. Hello, Dad. An awkward silence followed. What do you say to the father who chose your sister's uncertain future over your certain one, who you haven't spoken to in 6 years, who now lay weakened by illness, but once stood as the unmovable obstacle to your dreams? You look well, he finally said. Successful. I replied simply. He nodded, a strange expression crossing his face. Pride, mixed with something else I couldn't identify. Your mother says you're some kind of big shot at a tech company now. I lead a development team at Horizon Tech in Seattle. Always knew you'd land on your feet, he said, and the familiar phrase ignited a spark of anger in my chest. No thanks to you, I replied coldly. Dad had the decency to look away. I suppose I deserve that. Mom stepped in. Why don't we have some lunch? I've prepared your favorite sandwich, James, turkey with avocado. I'm not hungry, I said, still looking at Dad. I came because you're ill, and Mom said you wanted to see me, so here I am. Dad's jaw tightened, a familiar sign of his displeasure that sent me right back to childhood. Still direct to the point of rudeness, I see. Harold, Mom warned. Please. He sighed visibly, making an effort to soften his approach. You're right. Thank you for coming, James. It means a lot. I said nothing, waiting. Perhaps we could talk more over dinner, Mom suggested, when Natalie's here too, as a family. The word family hung in the air like an accusation. We're not a family, I said quietly. We're just people who share DNA. Dad's face reddened slightly. 6 years. And that's your attitude. We made one decision you didn't like, and you cut us off completely. One decision, I repeated incredulously. You destroyed my future plans weeks before they were set to begin. You broke promises you'd made my entire life. You chose Natalie over me in the most blatant way possible. It wasn't that simple, Dad started. It seemed pretty simple. From where I was standing, I retorted. Rebecca placed a calming hand on my arm, and I took a deep breath. I didn't come here to argue. I came because Mom said you might not have much time left, and I didn't want to regret not seeing you. Dad looked away. The doctors say I'll make a full recovery if I follow their instructions. But yes, it was. A close call. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. We'll come back for dinner, Rebecca said diplomatically. What time should we be here? Mom looked relieved at the suggestion. 6 o'clock, Natalie should be here by then. We left shortly after the brief interaction, having already drained me emotionally. In the car, Rebecca asked, Are you okay? No, I admitted, but I'm glad you're here. We spent the afternoon driving around my hometown, past my high school, the library, where Mom worked, the electronics store, where I'd had my first job. I showed Rebecca the park where I used to code on my laptop during summer, Breaks, the diner where Alicia and I had our first date, the community college I'd briefly considered before MIT accepted me. It's strange, I told her. I felt so trapped here as a teenager, desperate to escape to MIT. Then when that fell apart, all I wanted was to escape my family's betrayal. I never really got to appreciate this place for what it was. It shaped you, Rebecca observed. For better or worse. By the time we returned for dinner, I felt more centered. We arrived to find Natalie's car already in the driveway, a modest Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. Natalie opened the door when we knocked. Like Mom, she'd changed. Her hair was shorter, her former high school slimness replaced by a more mature figure. She hesitated, then stepped forward to hug me. Unlike with Mom, I returned this embrace briefly. It's good to see you, James, she said, sounding sincere. Really good. This is Rebecca, I introduced. My girlfriend. Nice to meet you, Natalie said, smiling warmly. James always did have excellent taste. The compliment surprised me, as did Natalie's apparently genuine warmth. I'd expected hostility, or at least defensiveness. Dinner was a strained affair. Dad had come downstairs, moving slowly, but insisting on sitting at the head of the table as always. Mom had prepared all my childhood favorites: roast chicken, garlic, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds. Conversation was stilted, focusing on safe topics like the weather in Seattle, Rebecca's job, the hospital's quality of care. We carefully avoided any mention of college, the past, or the elephant in the room, why I'd left and stayed away for 6 years. It wasn't until dessert, apple pie with ice cream, that Dad finally broached the subject. So, he said, setting down his fork, I suppose we should address why you're really here. Mom looked alarmed. Harold, maybe now isn't. No, Margaret. If we're going to have any chance at fixing this, we need to be honest. He turned to me. You left because you felt we betrayed you by supporting Natalie's education instead of yours. I left because you did betray me, I corrected. There's no felt about it. Dad's jaw tightened. We made a parental decision about how to allocate our resources. A decision you made without consulting me, after years of promises, I pointed out. After I'd turned down other opportunities based on those promises. You were 18, Dad said dismissively. A child doesn't get consulted on family financial decisions. I laughed bitterly. I was adult enough to be left on my own, though. Right? Adult enough that you weren't concerned when I disappeared in the middle of the night? A flash of pain crossed Dad's face. We were concerned. We looked for you. Not very hard, I retorted. I was at Marcus's house the first week. Then I got an apartment across town. I kept my same phone number. I wasn't hiding. You left a note telling us not to contact you. Mom interjected softly. And you respected that wish for 6 years, I said. Until you needed something. We don't need anything from you, Dad said sharply. Really? So the house isn't in foreclosure. The business isn't failing. There aren't medical bills piling up. Dad's face reddened. That's not why we asked you here. Isn't it? I challenged. Stop it, both of you, Natalie interrupted. We all turned to her in surprise. She rarely confronted Dad. This isn't helping anything. She turned to me. James, they didn't ask you here for money. I've been handling their finances since Dad's heart attack. Yes, things are tight, but we're managing. We've already worked out payment plans with the hospital. I looked at her skeptically. Then why now? Why reach out? After 6 years of silence, Mom's eyes filled with tears. Because we almost lost your father, and it made us realize how easily we could lose you forever without ever making things right. Make things right, how? I asked. You can't undo what happened. No, Dad admitted, his voice unexpectedly soft. We can't. But we can finally tell you the truth. I frowned. What truth? Dad and Mom exchanged glances. Then Mom took a deep breath. It wasn't just about the money, James. That was part of it, yes. We had less saved than we'd led you to believe. The recession hit your father's business hard, and we'd had to dip into the college fund. But that wasn't the main reason, Dad continued. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid, I repeated, confused. Dad nodded, not meeting my eyes. Afraid of losing you. MIT would take you to a different world. A world of intellectual elites and opportunities far beyond anything in this town. A world I didn't understand, and couldn't be part of. I stared at him. So you sabotaged my future because you were afraid I'd outgrow you. I told myself it was about being practical, Dad admitted. That Natalie needed the support more. That you were resourceful enough to find another way. But deep down? Yes. I was afraid you'd leave and never look back. That you'd become someone who would be embarrassed by his construction worker father and librarian mother. That's insane, I stammered. I was proud of you both. I never looked down on what you did. I know that now, Dad said quietly. But I couldn't see it then. And then you left anyway, exactly as I feared, but because of my actions, not despite them. The irony was staggering. My father had created the very situation he most feared. I wanted to tell you the truth, Mom said, wiping tears, to explain. But your father. I wouldn't let her. Dad finished. My pride wouldn't allow it. And then you were gone, and the years passed, and it became harder and harder to reach out. Natalie spoke up. I didn't know any of this until after I dropped out of Westfield. Dad and I had a huge fight when I told him I was leaving. That's when he finally admitted what he'd done. Why he'd pushed so hard for me to go there. I turned to her. You didn't know? She shook her head, looking miserable. I knew they were choosing to fund my education over yours, and I should have spoken up. That's on me, and I've regretted it every day. But I didn't know Dad's real reasons. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this revelation. All these years I'd thought it was simple favoritism, Natalie over me. But it was fear of losing me to a world my father couldn't understand. That doesn't excuse what we did, Dad said, his voice breaking slightly. But I wanted you to know the truth before. He didn't finish the sentence. Before you I supplied. He nodded once, looking older than his years. I'm not going to die right away, he clarified. But facing mortality has a way of forcing honesty. I looked around the table, at my father diminished but still proud, at my mother tearful and hopeful, at Natalie remorseful for her part in the deception, at Rebecca supportive and steady beside me. I built a life without you, I said finally. A good life. It was hard and it hurt, but I did it. We know, Mom said softly, and we're so proud of you, even though we have no right to be. I don't need your pride, I said, but without the bitterness that would have colored those words years ago, I don't need anything from you. We understand, Dad said, looking defeated for the first time in my memory. But I continued, maybe. Maybe we can start building something new. Not pick up where we left off. That's impossible. But something different. Hope bloomed on Mom's face. We'd like that, very much. I'm not moving back to Michigan, I clarified. My life is in Seattle now, with Rebecca, and I'm not writing a check to solve your financial problems. We would never ask that, Dad insisted. But I continued, I can help you figure out the best way forward. Make a plan, and maybe visit occasionally. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't even reconciliation in the fullest sense. But it was an opening, a possibility, where before there had been only a wall. As Rebecca and I drove back to our hotel that night, she asked, How are you feeling? I considered the question carefully. Lighter, I finally said. Like I've set down something heavy I've been carrying for years. And what about their financial situation? I'll help them make a plan, I decided. But they need to solve it themselves. Some boundaries need to remain. She nodded, understanding. It's a beginning. Yes, I agreed, watching the familiar streets of my hometown pass by outside the window. A beginning. The flight back to Seattle felt different from the tense journey to Michigan. Rebecca dozed against my shoulder as I gazed out at the clouds below my mind, processing everything that had happened during our 3-day visit. After the explosive dinner conversation, we'd spent the following days in more measured discussions. I'd reviewed my parents' financial situation, not to bail them out, but to help them develop a sustainable plan. The house wasn't in immediate danger of foreclosure, but Dad's medical bills and business debts had created a precarious situation. You need to downsize, I'd told them frankly. The house is too big for just the two of you now, and property values in the neighborhood have increased. You could buy something smaller, and use the difference to clear the most pressing debts. Dad had initially bristled at the suggestion. The house had been his pride and joy, the physical manifestation of his success. But after Mom gently reminded him of their reality, he'd reluctantly agreed it made sense. You always did have a good head for practical solutions, he'd admitted. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father, it was significant. Back in Seattle, I immediately scheduled another session with Dr. Marshall to process the experience. It sounds like you achieved more closure than you expected, he observed, after I recounted the trip. I did, I acknowledged. Not complete resolution. I don't think that's possible. But understanding their motivations helps, even if it doesn't excuse what they did. And how do you feel about maintaining contact going forward? I considered the question. I'm willing to try. Limited contact on my terms. Video calls occasionally. Maybe another visit next year. That seems like a healthy boundary, Dr. Marshall approved. Neither cutting them off completely, nor rushing back into a false semblance of normal family relations. Work welcomed me back with the usual flurry of projects and deadlines. My team had managed well in my absence, but there were decisions only I could make. I threw myself back into the familiar routine, finding comfort in the world I'd built for myself. A month after our visit, I received an email from Natalie, with photos of a small ranch-style house on the other side of town. Mom and Dad are considering this place, she wrote. What do you think? It was a simple gesture, but meaningful, acknowledging my advice, including me in family decisions without pressure. I replied with some practical considerations about the property and ended with, it looks like a good fit for them. Our communication continued, sporadic but civil. Natalie shared updates about her job at the marketing firm where she'd recently been promoted. Mom sent occasional texts, usually just checking in without expectation. Dad remained more distant, but on my birthday, he called briefly. Just wanted to wish you a happy birthday, he said, his voice still carrying that note of awkwardness. Your mother's sending a card. Thank you, I replied. After a pause, I added, how's your recovery going? Good days and bad, he admitted, but more good than bad lately. It wasn't a deep conversation, but it was something. A small bridge across a wide gulf. Meanwhile, my own life continued to evolve. The experience with my family had unexpectedly catalyzed a new direction in my career. I began volunteering with a local organization that helped underprivileged students learn coding skills, eventually joining their board of directors. What made you decide to get involved? The program director asked after I'd committed to a substantial time investment. I know what it's like to have educational dreams derailed by circumstances, I explained. These kids deserve a chance regardless of their family situation. This work led to another initiative, creating a scholarship fund specifically for promising tech students who lacked family financial support. I seeded it with a significant portion of my own savings and worked with Horizon to establish a matching program for employee contributions. Rebecca supported these efforts wholeheartedly, often volunteering alongside me. Our relationship deepened, and on a hiking trip to Mount Rainier that fall, I proposed. Her yes echoed among the mountains, marking another milestone in the life I'd built. When I called to tell my parents about the engagement, Mom cried happy tears. Dad, in his awkward way, said, "She's a good one, James. Don't let her get away." I don't intend to, I assured him. The wedding planning raised inevitable questions about family involvement. After long discussions with Rebecca and more sessions with Dr. Marshall, I decided to invite them, with clear boundaries established in advance. We want you there, I told them during a video call. But I need you to understand that this doesn't mean everything is forgotten or fully forgiven. We're building something new, not pretending the past didn't happen. They accepted these terms with surprising grace. Mom asked if she could help with any preparations from Michigan. Dad simply said he was honored to be included. Natalie agreed to be one of Rebecca's bridesmaids after the two formed an unexpected friendship through texts and calls. She makes you happy, Natalie told me. That's all any of us should want for you. The wedding was small but beautiful, held at a waterfront venue in Seattle with the mountains as our backdrop. My parents flew in 3 days before staying at a nearby hotel. Dad, now recovered enough to walk, without assistance, approached me the night before the ceremony. I'm not good with words, he began awkwardly. Never have been. But I need to say this clearly. I'm sorry, James. What I did was wrong. I can't change it, but I want you to know I recognize the harm I caused. It was the direct apology I'd never expected to hear. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak immediately. I'm proud of the man you've become, he continued, not because of anything I did. Clearly I hindered more than helped, but because of who you are, your strength, your determination. Thank you, I managed finally. That means something. We didn't hug, we weren't there yet, but we shook hands, his grip firm despite his health challenges. The following spring, I received news that Thomas, my first mentor, was retiring and selling his business. On impulse, I flew back to Michigan for his retirement party. "You were my best hire," he told me, clapping me on the shoulder. "Even if you did outgrow us in record time." "I wouldn't be where I am without you," I replied sincerely. "You gave me a chance when I needed it most." While in town, I had dinner with my parents at their new, smaller home. The atmosphere was different, less charged with history, as if the new space allowed for new relationships to form. Dad showed me his workshop in the garage, where he was making furniture as a hobby during his retirement. Mom had transformed the spare bedroom into a home library. Natalie stopped by, briefly introducing her new boyfriend, a teacher at the local high school. It wasn't the family dynamic of my childhood, and certainly not what I'd imagined during those years of estrangement. It was something different, more measured, more intentional, with clearer boundaries, and more honest communication. Back in Seattle, Rebecca asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they'd supported your MIT dreams?" Sometimes I admitted, I'd probably be doing similar work, maybe at a different company, but I wouldn't have met Thomas or you. I wouldn't have gone through the struggles that shaped who I am now. Do you regret it? The path you had to take? I thought carefully before answering. I regret the pain and the lost years with my family. I regret that it took such extreme circumstances for my father to recognize his fears and mistakes. But I don't regret the person I've become because of it. The truth was, the betrayal that once defined me had become just one chapter in a longer story. An important chapter, certainly, one that had forced me to discover my own strength, resilience, and capacity for forgiveness. But no longer the entire narrative. 6 years after walking away from my childhood home with nothing but a backpack and determination I'd built, not just a career and financial stability, but something more valuable, a life on my own terms with relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or fear. The wounds hadn't disappeared entirely. Such deep cuts always leave scars. But scars can be marks of strength as much as reminders of pain. They show where we've been broken and how we've healed. Sometimes imperfectly, sometimes with lingering sensitivity, but healed nonetheless. If there's one lesson I've learned through all of this, it's that your worth isn't determined by others' validation, not even your parents'. True self-worth comes from within, from knowing who you are, and standing firmly in that knowledge, even when those who should support you fail to do so. And family, real family, isn't always defined by blood. It's defined by who stands by you, who values you, who sees your potential, and encourages your growth rather than fearing it. Sometimes that includes biological relatives. Sometimes it doesn't. What matters is building connections based on genuine care and respect. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after someone you trusted let you down? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to define their future. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the path others close for you leads to doors you never knew existed.